On today's episode of Detour, we have Joe Perez, creative director. Joe's resume is probably some of the most desired positions for any creative in the world. He worked for Kanye West, worked at Donda, was responsible for album covers over there, some of the most famous merch that we've all purchased, and more importantly, developed his own creative agency, continued to have some of the biggest artists and clients in the world, and now launching a new brand called Club Fantasy. And so we're here to discuss about his background, what is a creative director, his whole kind of story, and advice to people that want to become this type of position. It's not an easy road, but it's an amazing opportunity to learn about this market and really understand the type of work this man does. It's pretty fascinating. I've got to know him really well in the last 6 months, and I'm excited to share my conversation with him. All right, hey everyone. So we have a very special guest today, Joe Perez from Providence, Rhode Island.
Hey, happy to be here.
So Joe is a creative director. I don't want to touch on your resume yet because it's very impressive, and I think you have some amazing stories. But I really wanted to start with, what is a creative director?
A creative director, like I think we just touched on, it's kind of evolved over the last 10 years. I mean, you look at it from a traditional standpoint of advertising and marketing, it's just somebody that's kind of got the overall vision, that puts the pieces together, that's able to clearly communicate his or her vision to the client, and then also, work with their team to bring that vision, to fruition. But now it's kind of evolved, and especially within my own industry of music and fashion, to a point where, I mean, you're doing that, but you're also kind of managing their social property, and that may have like a completely different personality and like a lifestyle component that fits into the overall picture. So it's really grown to this massive kind of lifestyle brand moment where everything is kind of like fitting together and through social media that I see. So it's kind of like our guiding force now. It's almost dictating based on what the people and the masses are kind of consuming and how they're consuming and what the trends are. It's almost kind of dictating to the creative director, how do we fit into that? How does my artist or my vision fit within that constant stream now of communication?
And that's interesting, because do you feel like 25 years ago, someone like in your position probably had to travel the world, experience cities and music and festivals and all that stuff to get inspired? Can you do it just all off Instagram and get the same vibe, or do you still feel like you need to go out and...
There's still a component of being there in the moment and having, experiencing the live show. I mean, obviously, if you're doing creative direction for an experience that, people are going to go to and take away, whatever moment that the artist is trying to create through, this experience, if it's going to be like a narrative that follows through the album, and then you kind of explored more with visuals. I mean, it's something that you have to be on site for and kind of build from the ground up. But I mean, it starts all at home with research, like at a library or social media, and see what other people are doing or have done in the past for, Broadway shows or operas or musicals, and kind of bringing all those elements together. But I mean, essentially, yeah, if you're doing an album, you can sit at home and pull all the references from the internet.
Got it.
But again, even the internet has really obscure sources, and people are always constantly searching for those, because I mean, so many things are readily available that you almost see people's styles kind of stepping on each other a little bit, because they're not taking the time a lot of the time to do the research.
Got it.
So I think a good creative director is always trying to find those obscure kind of resources.
Oh, that's interesting. And kind of touching on your experience now. So if you go on your website, you've worked with some of the biggest artists in the world. So Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, Tiesto, like these are like the household names, any corner of earth. How does it work? How do you work with people like that? Because I interact with those people too.
Yeah.
And I feel like it can feel like it's a frustrating experience because they're so particular in their image. And you obviously, as a creative person and someone that's working with them, like how do you push the conversation forward, but also kind of appease their personal taste levels and what they want to accomplish? Like how does it's such like a balancing act, and I'm always curious how different people handle it.
Yeah, again, you're working with very specific personalities, and each one of them has their own process and has kind of come into their own identity by their own journey. So it's kind of getting to know that and doing a little bit of background research before you even get to talk to them. And then kind of with Nicki or Kanye, they would definitely guide the conversation. It's like they know exactly what they're doing for every album release, what they want to say, and how they want to explore it. And then, I mean, but that's going to evolve. Obviously, they're going to have ideas, like, beginning of the week to the end of the week. And it's kind of almost like you're in a reaction period as a creative director or creative, and you're kind of vibing off their energy and then trying to put that into what you take away from it, whether it's like an album as an example, it's like you listen to the album, you digest that, and then you have your own take, you go back, you listen to what they have to say, and you kind of try to merge the two. But with Nicki or Kanye, they were very specific. With the Tiesto, a little bit more hands off. I think he's more into the experience of being in the club, and as far as like doing artwork or crafting an album, especially the packaging or the artwork, it's more, he leaves it more up to you and your interpretation. So everybody has their own signature style of how they like to work.
That's interesting. So you posted a video. We were at dinner last night. You posted a video of how the Cruel Summer album cover came to work. And does that mean there was like hundreds of different variations before you got to the final?
That's correct. There are 325 variations. So we had 325 different covers. Yeah. And only one was, finally it was kind of whittled down and sculpted and chosen. So.
And is that like, so there's some guidance given, and then you're constantly tweaking it to get to the final product? Yeah,
let me give you some insight to that process. Kanye was on sabbatical, just kind of touring Europe, just for fun. And we did a lot of interior photography of beautiful sculptures and ceilings. And he loved 4 photographs. And he says, the cover is going to be one of these 4 photographs. And so start exploring that. So that gave us a base to work off of, and then he kind of whittled it down to 2 photographs and went to 1, and then we took that and we translated it into 3D, and we moved elements around so it felt balanced, and it kind of led over 300 covers to the final cover. Wow. But that was kind of like where it started from.
That's amazing. And I wonder if you realize this, but the work you and Kanye did together, specifically when it comes to merch, changed fashion.
Yeah, it did. It was interesting to see.
Did you guys know what you were doing when you guys did you guys have an inkling that it would have this kind of impact? Because you did Yeezus, and you did Pablo merch.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like, at this point now, those are iconic kind of collector items for people like me who are in this culture.
Yeah.
Like, I remember standing in line. My wife wanted Pablo merch, and she's not. Look, she loves rap and hip hop, but it's not like she's into it like how a young kid would be. But she was like, wanted every piece of Pablo merch, wanted, that just created like this industry now. And I mean, like, when you were working on it, what was it like?
Well, I mean, the Pablo one was interesting because that's when we did get the lines. I mean, Yeezus, we had pop-ups, but it was nothing like Pablo. But we initially, very aware of the fact that we wanted to create wearable memes that people kind of could take the design and recreate in their own. And that's why you see so many copies out there.
And so that was the intention.
It was the intention from the get-go. Yeah. So it was kind of like we had that idea, and we found a great artist here in Los Angeles, Callie DeWitt, who already had this style. He had the tombstone design, and he was using this font that I think had fallen off the face of the earth that we brought back. And he was already doing kind of like putting memes in there of like, he would come to you and be like, okay, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite song? Like, and what's your favorite artist? And then he'd find quotes or pieces from that movie or artist's life or whatever, and merge all 3 together. Wow. And there it was kind of like a wearable meme of like very specifically what it meant to you. Mm-hmm. So we tried to do the same with Kanye's lyrics, but then we saw people do exactly what Callie did, was take it and make it their own. And that's when we won.
I have a personal experience with that. Andres, my business partner, for my bachelor party, did I Feel Like D shirts.
There you go.
And like all the things, just all the things about my life and the back. And it was literally like, I was like, this is crazy. Like the impact that merch had on fashion, just the whole world.
Yep.
Like everyone wanted a piece of that.
Yeah, it was nuts. I saw that like a Yale sports team did their own jersey in that style. But I feel like could be anything. Yeah. I feel like, like you, like, you know, like Elvis, anybody. So it could really kind of be interchangeable for based on your personality and also, you know, just how you felt that day.
That's amazing
Yeah.
because and then you guys also had pop-ups, which was also to me in streetwear wasn't a common thing.
No, not like the mega pop-ups the way they are now.
And I feel like that started that trend too. Like to me, the two biggest things that came out of that tour were obviously the merch, the music, obviously, the merch, and then the pop-up experience, which just exploded after that.
Yeah.
And so, what was that like?
I mean, the pop-up was interesting because, I mean, A, we didn't expect such a turnout, and B, it kind of was a turning point where other artists saw, oh, I can have massive pop-ups where I can make X number, you know, and have my fans connect with you know, this moment in time, whether it's an album release or whatever they want to do, because physical albums have gone away. So it's the only kind of physical piece that people can latch onto and have a connection with now. So, you know, what was funny was the pop-up came out of just, you know, Kanye didn't want to pay the rent that the whole time that was basically the fashion office for his Madison Square show, season 3. So he's like, I don't want to pay the rent. Maybe we have a pop-up and that will pay for the rent. So we had this and it just friggin' exploded. And we ran out of merch like first day.
That's crazy.
And he made like, I don't want to say the number, but
Yeah.
it was insane. You know, it's like, and then we realized what we had, and that's when he developed, you know, further pop-ups that happen all over the country.
Yeah, I remember when it was in LA, the line was bananas.
Yeah. So
I was
but
driving
New
by, I
York
couldn't
was,
believe it.
yeah, it was, you know, it took everybody off guard in the camp. It was kind of interesting, but yeah, it was awesome to be there in that moment and be able to connect with all the fans, really. You know,
And I think it changed like for every artist now.
Yeah.
Merch all of a sudden again became very, very important, because I remember, I feel like in the rock era is when like those touring shirts were so popular in like the 60s and 70s,
Right.
maybe even 80s. And then it kind of took in, I think 90s, like pop music, whatever. I feel like it was disconnected. Like it didn't really connect.
Yeah.
I think it was like young girls mainly buying that stuff. And then it just was irrelevant. And then this moment happens. And now the merch for every artist is such an integral part of their release. Like we're equally anxious to see what product they release along with their music, and they're working with designers. They're making it feel like a fashion moment.
Right.
And it's such like a huge part of fashion now, our artist merchandise.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover you see with Travis Scott, I mean Kanye, and then Virgil coming from Kanye's camp and now transitioning into high fashion. It's just like now there's a conversation going on that nobody can ignore. You know, it's just like the impact of music and streetwear kind of combined with fashion now. So it's just, it's interesting to see the growth period. And really what kicked it off was Yeezus. You know, that was like the first kind of tour merch line that shattered all the records. We had a pop-up and we realized, oh, we could grow this and maybe we do a bigger and better pop-up for Pablo. But it was the first time that we really saw that the fans were digesting merch and really cared about it just as much as the experience itself of being there, you know?
Yeah.
At the concert, I mean. But it was because of what was happening. The physical album was disappearing. So there was a need, you know, to latch onto something.
That's
and
amazing.
it just was there at the right moment. We captured that moment in time.
So one of the things I'm always fascinated about with not just Kanye, but all the people around him, I've never seen, and I've been now fashion 17 years, I've never seen a musician, a creative, anyone in fashion ever have such an impact on all the people around him too.
Yeah.
Like that never
Right?
happens.
I
Like,
know.
you know, like I don't know anybody who worked on anything with, I don't know, Justin Timberlake, right? He's a huge artist.
Yeah.
He was obviously massively successful, but you know, I don't know who did anything for Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's just like he just was Justin Timberlake. But when it came to Kanye, I felt like he did a great job of just like highlighting all the talent around him, and everyone. It's like the biggest tree. Like I can't wait to see 20 years from now the Kanye tree of all these amazing, successful creatives.
Yeah.
That never happens in like. I don't know. I've never seen it happen before.
Well, he set up a school of thought, and especially with launching the design studio Donda.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a core ethos there that we followed, and the work ethic was, I didn't know anybody that worked harder than us. I mean, we worked around the clock. I mean, with Cruel Summer, I was working 3 months straight, 7 days a week, 16-hour days, you know? So, and we're all kind of on that kick at once. But at one point, we actually had a conversation of starting a school.
Wow.
Because we had all this experience, and he actually wanted us to teach classes at one point. So there is a value system there that I don't think too many artists have in a core team. It's like people are constantly being shuffled in and out, or they work with him per project. But he had a core group of people with him for like 10 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And do you think people work that hard? Because it's interesting you say how hard you work. Do you think people work that hard because he's just awe-inspiring and he's so talented that like you were inspired by his work ethic, or you were inspired by the quality of product he put out? Like what? Because I'm always trying to get people to work hard too, and I have not been as successful as he has been.
I think it's all the above that you just mentioned. Plus, that was his work ethic when he was in the studio, recording Yeezus, for an example. Like he works until he falls asleep. Like he literally is in the recording booth, and then he'll just nod off because he had not slept in like 48 hours.
Wow.
So when he nods off in the recording session, people that's the break.
Yeah.
They can go eat, and they can take a break, actually sleep themselves until he wakes up, and then they all get notifications. But it's just like when you're working for somebody that expects what they do to trickle down and filter to their staff, it's like you're on their time, you know? So I was working as much as he was, and that guy was up all night, and we'd be on the phone at 5 a.m. just, working on different elements of whatever he's producing at that moment. But it's kind of hard not to live up those expectations if your boss is doing it. So he was kind of like leading by example.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously you worked with him for a long time, and then you went on your own and you started doing projects for all these amazing artists and companies. And now you're launching a brand.
Yeah.
And
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Club Fantasy.
Yeah.
And what's your kind of like inspiration to start a brand and Club Fantasy?
Well, the inspiration behind Club Fantasy was the name is based in Rhode Island, Providence. I used to drive on the highway every morning, and I'd pass by a club, and it was Club Fantasies with a IES. So I changed that name to just Club Fantasy, and so I like to pick this like all my inspiration comes from my city and my home, Providence. It's just like an inspiring city. There's a lot of writers and artists that have come from that city and fallen in love with it. So from there, I kind of infused my love of dance music, EDM, from the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of like when I was going to college, and I went to a bunch of raves out here in LA. Yeah. And especially in the Inland Empire. Yeah. And I kind of merged the two together, and I looked at old rave flyers that inspired the art, and kind of put the pieces together that way and crafted a narrative. I think we delivered the art in 2.5 weeks. So
because it was just so natural too.
It was just something I always wanted to do, and I had it in the back of my head, and I never had a chance to do it until Luis from Lush Network gave me a call, and he's like, "What else do you got? What's your next line?" I'm like, "Well, I have this idea about Club Fantasy," and he's like, "Okay, let's do it."
That's amazing.
And then then we met with you, and the rest is history.
No, and I'm excited because I've never seen a brand come together so quickly and so well done. Like everything is so well thought through, like everything from the name to the artwork to how it's being launched to the website to the packing to the hang tag. Yeah, it's a real experience. And like, I just feel like there's a moment happening. Because I feel like our age group is kind of the leaders of the creative culture today. A lot of our youth is being infused into popular culture again. So like, I grew up going to those types of parties and events too. So I know that culture. I remember the Jenko jeans and the, that whole scene, fresh jive and all that stuff. So it's cool to see that like you're bringing like a modern interpretation of the brand with Club Fantasy, and like kind of all of our youth and all these new young people who didn't get to experience that, because that's like a different era. That's like when you totally partied.
It's before a pre-cell phone.
Yeah, like you would just go and just gone. And you were like...
Nobody heard from you.
Yeah, you literally couldn't see someone for 2 days.
If you were really cool, you had a pager.
Yeah.
That was it. But I mean, it's something to be said. I mean, you gain all this experience, and you get to a certain age where you start seeing things kind of come full circle in culture. And then you can kind of take advantage of that knowledge and then bring it back and reinterpret it in a new way, so the next generation can enjoy it just as much as you did, and that's what makes it fun.
That's crazy.
And it's a little bit of an education process for the next generation too. Yeah. It's like what music was back then. Maybe they find new artists, new fine artists as well. So maybe they're inspired by that, and they do something of their own.
That's amazing. And kind of like a parting thought.
Sure.
If someone wants to end up in your line of work, being a creative director and being in the position you are today, which I'm sure a lot of young people want to do, what is a piece of advice that you would recommend to get them on the right path?
I mean, I always recommend a background in art history. You know, even if you went to an art school for, foundation, it always helps. You should always have extensive knowledge, at least in one field, whether, your graphic design speaks to you, photography, filmmaking, whatever it is. I mean, you should digest it, you should love it, and then you can take that knowledge and then you can build off of it as a foundation. I have a background in film. So I kind of take what I've learned about crafting narrative and, the 3-act structure, and I can bring it into my work as a creative director and a graphic designer. So that's when you say it's just like this line came together really quickly and really well and really thought out. It's because I have that whole experience, that background of story, and also all my experience with Kanye over the years. So I'm able just to move really quickly on everything I do now because I have that big pool of experience that I can pull from and all the references that are kind of constantly shuffling through my head. Yeah. So I really think that coupled with a lot of research, I see a lot of kids just not really paying attention to how much that's invaluable, really. It's like going to a library, sitting down, finding the books and the resources that aren't available on the internet. Versus just going online.
Yeah, I mean,
and
that's
searching,
like crazy for kids to hear.
Actually reading.
Yeah.
Because everybody, I mean, an example is I went to the RISD library, which is like the biggest depository of art books on the East Coast. And I went through the jewelry section and I look at the modern first and I went back in time all the way to the Greco-Roman era. And literally everybody's just been copying each other, for like, centuries.
Yeah.
But I think it's not until you digest all of that where you realize it's just like, okay, here's the original. And then how did that inspire all of the contemporary artists out there? Yeah. So it's nice to keep learning, Do you think, last question, do you think you have to go to college to get that level of experience? Or you just, if you're willing to go to a library and put the work in, you can skip that part? Or do you think college actually gave you a pretty big edge? No, I mean, it's funny. I don't remember the person that was preaching this, but I kind of agree with it. There was somebody who's doing like a college tour and somebody asked him like, what college would you go to now? And he's like, well, I wouldn't. Now what I would do is I take my $100,000 that I would pay for college and then hit up say it's like graphic design, hit up all the graphic designers that you'd want to intern for and be like, hey, I'm going to pay you $10,000 and I want to come like live and work with you for a month. Yeah. And if you get 10 of the best people in the world, that's invaluable. That's the best education. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That would be the best education you could ever buy for $100,000. Yeah. In your field, if that was possible. So I thought that was genius. So no, it's like, it's however way, whatever way works for you. But I think getting the experience somehow, whether it's working for somebody that you admire, that you look up to, or, you think school's the right structure for you. I mean, you have to know how you learn and what, I guess, the right structure is based on your personality type, But a good example, my last assistant, who's now doing all of Post Malone's creative direction. Wow. He dropped out of school, like he had like 3 semesters left, and then he moved to LA to work out of the Donda studio with me because he had that opportunity. Look at him now. Yeah. He learned as much as he could. He learned about the process that we had of referencing materials and design, and he kind of took that process, and now he's killing it with Post Malone. He's probably, I mean, I don't look at them as competition. I'm really happy they're successful, but it's kind of like they're definitely leveling the playing field and bringing everything up to like a different level of expertise. Like they're amazing. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you very much for your time. Sure. And then can young people hit you up if they have questions? Anytime. I mean, you can hit me up on DM on my gram. Yeah. And, or email, joe@joerperez.com. That's amazing. Thank you. Totally. Appreciate it. D, my pleasure. Thank you.